Imagine being chained to a Roman guard 24 hours a day.
Yeah, 7 days a week, just completely bound.
Right. You are facing potential execution by the most brutal empire on the planet. You can't travel, your diet is just, well, whatever is handed to you, and your basic freedoms are entirely stripped away.
It's a horrific situation.
It really is. And in that situation, you have to ask, what would dominate your thoughts? I mean, for most of us, our minds would be entirely consumed with our own survival, right?
Wow. Absolutely. Survival, comfort, or at the very least, a desperate plea for escape.
Yeah. But the man we are looking at today, he just ignored his own chains. He focused intensely on the theological precision of a church he had never even visited.
It is a staggering historical reality.
Yeah.
I mean, he possessed a mind completely unhindered by his physical captivity. He was focusing intensely on the objective truth, holding a distant group of believers together.
Welcome to Reformed Thinking. Today we are taking a massive deep dive into an intense theological and exegetical analysis of the Apostle Paul's prayer. Specifically, we are looking at Colossians chapter 1, verses 9 through 12.
And our mission here is specific. We're going to unpack how an ancient, prison-born prayer absolutely shatters modern concepts of spiritual growth.
Yeah, we want to show that true Christian maturity roots itself in objective truth, divine intellect leading to visible daily obedience.
That is the goal.
So take a look at your own situation right now. If you feel exhausted by modern Christianity's demand for emotional highs or mystical experiences or maybe those pragmatic self-help routines, this specific text offers a completely different, structurally sound blueprint for the Christian life.
It strips away all that fluff. It gives you an ironclad theological framework.
So to really grasp the magnitude of this text, I think we have to start by setting the historical stage.
Right. We're looking at a time frame around AD 60 to 62. The Apostle Paul is under house arrest in Rome.
And when we say house arrest, we shouldn't picture like a comfortable modern apartment with an ankle monitor.
No, not at all. He is physically chained to a member of the elite Praetorian Guard around the clock. I mean, the shifts change, but the chain remains.
His physical mobility is restricted to a very tight radius. He can't walk the streets. He can't visit the churches he loves so much.
And he is staring down the very real possibility of a death sentence from the Roman emperor. Yet his theological vigilance is absolute.
The psychological resilience required for that is just hard to fathom. I mean, we get stuck in traffic and our entire day is ruined.
Yeah, our prayers become a list of petty complaints.
Spot on. But here is a man chained to a literal soldier, and his thoughts are consumed by the welfare of a church hundreds of miles away in Asia Minor.
And a key detail here is that Paul didn't even plant this church.
Right. He had never even been there.
That is correct. He is writing to the believers in Colossae. And to understand the original recipients of this letter, you really have to understand their socioeconomic reality.
So what was the situation in Colossae at that time?
Well, in previous generations, it had been a bustling, prosperous metropolis. It was situated on a major east-west trade route. They were actually famous for a specific type of dark red wool.
Okay, so they used to have money and status.
Yeah, but by the 1st century, the trade routes had shifted. The city was in severe economic decline.
So they were struggling.
Intensely. They were constantly overshadowed by their much more successful, wealthier neighboring cities, like Laodicea and Hierapolis. And to make matters worse, the region was highly volatile. It was prone to devastating earthquakes.
Wow. So you have a population dealing with economic depression, irrelevance, and physical danger all at once.
Yeah, and Paul had never visited this congregation. The gospel actually reached them through the missionary work of a man named Epaphras.
And Epaphras was likely converted under Paul's extensive ministry in Ephesus, right?
Yes, and he took that truth back to his hometown to establish this local assembly.
Okay, so Epaphras does the ground-level church planting in his struggling hometown. But then he makes this incredibly long, dangerous trek from Asia Minor all the way to Rome to visit Paul in his imprisonment.
He does, and he's not just bringing a friendly greeting or, a care package.
No, he is bringing highly concerning news. There is a specific, complex threat infiltrating this young, vulnerable church.
Yes. Epaphras brings a report of a highly dangerous, toxic syncretism. Historians often call it the Colossian Heresy.
And this wasn't just a simple, single false teaching, was it?
Not at all. It was a blended system that drew from multiple contradictory sources. It combined Jewish legalism, insisting on strict adherence to circumcision, Old Testament dietary laws, and the observance of Sabbaths and new moons.
And it mixed that with pagan asceticism, right?
Yes. Harsh treatment of the physical body, early proto-Gnostic dualism, and Hellenistic mystery religions that practiced the worship of angels.
Trying to visualize that system is just dizzying. You have people demanding strict adherence to an ancient Jewish calendar while simultaneously starving themselves to induce mystical visions of angels.
All wrapped up in Greek philosophical dualism.
It sounds like they were taking bits and pieces from every religious system available in the local marketplace and just mashing them together into a custom-built religion.
And the most insidious part is how they viewed Jesus Christ. These false teachers didn't deny Christ outright.
Because a full denial would have been too obvious, right? The church would have rejected it immediately.
Precisely. Instead, they demoted him. They presented Christ as just the starting line, or perhaps just one of many spiritual emanations bridging the gap between God and matter.
They claimed that while faith in Jesus was a fine beginning to reach true spiritual maturity, a believer needed a secret, higher knowledge.
Which they called gnosis. That, along with mystical experiences and severe legalistic disciplines, they were essentially telling the Colossians, Jesus is great for beginners, but if you want the advanced class, you need our secret methods.
That sounds remarkably similar to the modern spiritual but not religious trend you see everywhere today.
Oh, very much so.
You have people who mix and match horoscopes, wellness retreats, crystals, and fragmented religious ideas from various traditions.
And they might mention Jesus, but they treat him as just one of many spirit guides or enlightened teachers on the path to self-actualization.
Yeah, they want the mystical vibe without the objective, exclusive claims of the biblical Christ. So looking at Paul's specific situation, writing from literal chains, how does his response expose the fatal flaw in this modern, self-centered, comfort-driven spirituality?
Well, it exposes the flaw by showing a staggering contrast in priorities.
Right.
Here is a man suffering under Roman guard, deprived of basic human freedoms.
Right.
If modern self-centered spirituality were the standard, his prayers would be entirely consumed with his own circumstances.
He would be praying for release, for better food, for comfortable surroundings, or, for the downfall of his political enemies.
Absolutely. But a man suffering in chains doesn't pray for his own release or comfort here. He prays for the theological stamina and ethical obedience of free believers.
That is just incredible.
It exposes the incredibly shallow nature of modern prayers that only ask for circumstantial relief. Paul's deepest concern is not that his chains be removed. His concern is that the Colossians would not be taken captive by false philosophy.
He looks right past his own physical imprisonment because he recognizes that theological error is a far more dangerous captivity.
Yes, you can be physically free in Colossae and be a slave to heresy, or you can be physically chained in Rome and be completely free in the truth.
Which leads us directly into how Paul counters this threat in verse 9. He starts laying down the theological bedrock to combat this heresy, and he does it by focusing on the mind.
He begins verse 9 by saying, "We have not ceased to pray for you, asking that you may be filled with the knowledge of his will."
We really need to stop and look at the concept behind the original Greek verb used for "that you may be filled."
We do. The way Paul constructs this sentence makes it clear that the believers are not the ones doing the filling. God does the filling.
This is what scholars call the divine passive, right?
Yes, the divine passive. It is a strictly monergistic work. The believer is the recipient of the divine action.
That is huge, because the false teachers were laying out this grueling synergistic treadmill.
Oh, they definitely were.
They were telling people to achieve fullness through severe diets, angel worship, and intellectual climbing. They made spiritual fullness a prize you had to earn through bizarre disciplines.
But Paul counters that entirely. He asserts that God is the one who supplies the filling, and what he fills them with is crucial. He doesn't pray for them to be filled with vague spiritual feelings or ecstatic emotional surges.
No, he specifies the knowledge of his will.
And the vocabulary he chooses is laser-focused against the heretics. The false teachers boasted about their secret gnosis, their subjective hidden insights that only the elite could attain.
Right, and Paul counters that by using the intensified compound word epignosis.
Yes. And this doesn't mean speculative guesses, esoteric visions, or subjective feelings. Epignosis means a full, precise, objective, and authoritative grasp of truth.
Paul asserts that the believers don't need to search for hidden keys or higher mystical planes. The objective gospel they already received is completely sufficient. They just need God to fill our minds with the precise depths of it.
He also specifies the sphere in which this knowledge operates. He says, in all spiritual wisdom and understanding.
I want to break down those two concepts, Sophia and synesis, because they show how comprehensive this intellectual filling is supposed to be.
Let's do it. Those terms represent two distinct but necessary cognitive functions. Sophia, translated as wisdom, refers to the comprehensive grasp of eternal ultimate truths.
It's the big picture theological framework.
Yes, it is understanding the grand narrative of redemptive history, the nature of God, and the supremacy of Christ.
And then synesis, translated as understanding, refers to analytical processing, right?
Correct. It is the cognitive ability to take those massive biblical principles and run them together logically to make a sound deduction in real life. It is the application of truth to specific daily situations.
And Paul specifies that all of this is produced by the Holy Spirit. This isn't carnal cleverness or academic superiority. It is divine intellect imparted to the believer.
I like to think of Sophia as having a massive garage filled with all the right, perfectly manufactured parts to build a high-performance car. You have the engine block, the pistons, the transmission. You possess the ultimate materials.
Yeah, but synesis is possessing the mechanical logic to actually assemble those parts together in the correct order, so the engine fires up and the car actually runs down the street.
Spot on. You need both the comprehensive materials and the analytical logic to apply them.
Yeah.
Without Sophia, you have nothing to build with. Without synesis, you just have a pile of expensive parts sitting on the floor.
But let me play devil's advocate based on how our modern culture thinks. In today's climate, intellectualism is often viewed as cold, dead, or overly academic.
Right, you hear that a lot.
People say, don't put God in a theological box, just love him. So, doesn't focusing so intensely on the mind, on precise objective truth, run the risk of stripping away the heart and emotion of genuine faith?
I reject that modern mystical notion completely. The idea that spiritual growth requires emptying the mind or bypassing the intellect is a highly dangerous falsehood.
It really is.
True biblical spirituality is intensely intellectual.
Yeah.
You cannot live a life pleasing to God if your mind is not saturated with his precise, objective truth.
The mind is the necessary gateway to the heart.
Absolutely. You cannot truly love a God you don't accurately know. If you bypass the mind and rely only on subjective feelings, you are not worshiping the God of the Bible. You are worshiping a projection of your own emotions.
Yeah. Intellectual apprehension of sound doctrine is the fuel that produces white-hot devotion in the heart. Emotion without truth is just blind sentimentality.
It's like finding out a relative left you $10 million in their will. The sheer intellectual knowledge of that objective fact is what produces the massive emotional response of joy and relief.
The truth precedes the feeling.
Always. And the goal of this intellectual filling is never to just win theological trivia games or act superior. The argument moves seamlessly from the mind to the feet. Verse 10 outlines the final target of all this theological precision.
Right. The syntax flows flawlessly into the application. He prays they would be filled with precise knowledge for a highly specific purpose, to walk in a manner worthy of the Lord.
The vast theological reservoir in the mind is designed to produce a radical behavioral change in daily life.
And when you dig into the historical background of the Greek word used for worthily, it conjures the image of a balance scale, like a merchant weighing out grain or gold in an ancient marketplace.
The imagery is incredibly vivid. On one side of the scale, you have your lofty theological confession, the epignesis of God's will, your belief in the absolute supremacy of Christ, your grasp of double imputation.
And on the other side of the scale, you have your daily observable conduct.
Yes, your private life, your business ethics, how you speak to your spouse, how you treat your employees.
The word demands that the behavioral side weigh the same as the doctrinal side. The daily conduct of a believer must balance perfectly with their confession.
That paints a convicting picture. You can't have 50 pounds of systematic theology on one side of the scale and only 2 ounces of patience and kindness on the other.
No, you can't. And Paul describes what this balanced walk looks like using beautiful, organic terms, bearing fruit in every good work, and increasing in the knowledge of God.
The original language indicates continuous, habitual action. This is an organic circle of fruitfulness. Knowledge of God produces a worthy walk, which yields good works, which in turn leads to a deeper, more intimate knowledge of God.
It destroys the sterile mechanical rule-keeping of the false teachers.
It really does. They offered rigid lists: do not touch, do not taste, do not handle. Paul describes a living, breathing tree that naturally produces continuous fruit because its roots are submerged in divine truth.
But as Protestants, our central thesis is justification by faith alone. So when I see a text aggressively demanding every good work and telling believers they must be fully pleasing him, The tension is obvious.
I see where you're going.
Are we sliding back into a works-based system here? How do we reconcile this intense demand for daily behavioral obedience with the absolute bedrock truth that salvation is by faith alone, apart from human works?
We reconcile it by clearly distinguishing between the root and the fruit. Works never justify a sinner before holy God.
Never.
Justification is an instantaneous forensic declaration based solely on the imputed righteousness of Christ received by faith alone. However, a justified person will always inevitably produce good works.
The works are the visible evidence, the necessary fruit of a sovereignly regenerated heart.
Yes, the same God who justifies also sanctifies. The good works are the proof of life, not the purchase price of life. A dead apple tree produces no apples. A living apple tree produces apples because of its nature.
And understanding this distinction allows us to deliver a dual critique against two major errors prevalent today.
Let's talk about those. First, it critiques dead orthodoxy.
Yeah.
There are people who brag about knowing deep theology, who can debate historical doctrines perfectly, but who act harshly at home, cheat in their business dealings, or cause bitter divisions in the local church.
Their scales do not balance.
Not at all. Their lack of fruit exposes a severe deficiency in their supposed knowledge. It is treating theology as an academic hobby, rather than submitting to it as a sovereign master.
That makes a lot of sense. So what is the second critique?
The second critique lands heavily against modern seeker-sensitive pragmatism.
Oh, yeah.
This movement measures the success of a church by the size of the crowd, the production value of the music, and the emotional response of the audience.
They prioritize whatever pragmatic strategy draws the most people, often watering down the objective truth of Scripture to avoid offending the culture.
But Paul says the standard is walking worthily and pleasing the Lord in every respect, through quiet, holy obedience. Pragmatism asks, what works to build an audience? Biblical Christianity asks, what pleases the Lord of the universe?
It takes the focus off visible, earthly metrics and places it entirely on the daily integrity of the believer's walk.
Exactly. Spot on.
But let's be honest about the reality of the Christian life. Walking worthily in a fallen world, surrounded by hostility, temptation, and our own remaining sin, is utterly exhausting.
It is draining.
We cannot sustain that balance scale on our own. We will burn out if we try to generate that kind of obedience from our own willpower.
Paul knows this, which is why verse 11 addresses the true source of spiritual stamina. Verse 11 speaks of being strengthened with all might.
And again, the grammar points to an outside source.
It does. The word for might here means raw, manifest might. It is paired with a term that refers to God's weight-bearing glory.
So the standard of our strength is not our own willpower or our psychological resilience. It is the glorious omnipotence of God himself continuously supplied to us.
Right. And when humans think about asking God for divine might, we usually have a very specific, flashy picture in mind.
We want superhero abilities. We want the strength to fly away from our problems or the capacity to smash through our obstacles so we don't have to deal with them anymore.
We want the hostile boss fired, the chronic illness vanished, the bank account filled. But what is this divine might actually used for, according to Paul?
That is the most shocking part of the prayer. Paul says this divine omnipotence is supplied for steadfastness and long-suffering.
It is not for spectacular theatrical miracles. The first term, hypomone, translates to steadfastness or endurance under crushing, unchangeable circumstances.
It is the capacity to hold up under a heavy load without breaking. Think of a devastating medical diagnosis or a financial collapse.
And the second term, macrothymia, translates to long-suffering, specifically dealing with difficult, provoking, antagonistic people without retaliating.
Think of the hostile coworker, the mocking neighbor, or the rebellious child, and crucially, it must be done with joy.
Adding with joy prevents this endurance from souring into a grim, stoic resentment. You aren't just gritting your teeth, surviving the day, while secretly hating everyone around you.
You are enduring the crushing weight with a genuine, Christ-exalting joy. God doesn't give us the ability to instantly vaporize the hurricane.
No, he doesn't.
Instead, he supplies the structural integrity of an iron pillar. The winds are howling, the debris is flying, the circumstances are absolutely terrifying, but the iron pillar stands firm, completely unmoved by the chaos around it.
That structural integrity is the omnipotence of God at work in the believer. It is vital to apply a strict cessationist view to this verse.
How so?
Well, in the modern era, Many people have been taught that the supreme manifestation of the Holy Spirit in the church age is seen through ecstatic babble, dramatic faith healings, or alleged new prophecies. They look for the spectacular and the bizarre.
Yeah, that is very common.
But Paul locates the greatest display of divine omnipotence in a completely different sphere. The true, undeniable miracle is a believer enduring severe affliction, grief, or relentless persecution with supernatural, joyous patience.
When a Christian suffers a devastating loss and continues to praise the sovereignty of God without bitterness, the world witnesses a display of divine might that no fraudulent faith healer could ever replicate.
We have to redefine what a miracle looks like in the daily life of the church. The miracle is the quiet, unbreakable steadfastness of a saint under pressure.
And this steadfastness, this joyful endurance, flows directly into the climax of the entire prayer in verse 12.
The final action in this chain is giving thanks to the Father. This grounds the entire ethical walk, all the endurance, and all the fruitfulness and gratitude for an objective reality.
Verse 12 gives the specific reason for this thanksgiving. Giving thanks to the Father, who has qualified us to share in the inheritance of the saints in light.
We must focus intensely on the concept of God qualifying us. The grammar here denotes a completed historical event.
It is an action that is finished and stands as an accomplished fact in the past.
Yes, that grammatical reality is a death blow to any synergistic theology. It shatters it completely.
Because synergism teaches that salvation is a cooperative effort between God and man. It suggests that God does his part, and then we must do our part to maintain our justification or finalize our standing.
Right. It relies on a system of human merit cooperating with divine grace. But Paul says the Father has already qualified us. We do not work to qualify ourselves.
There is no progressive qualification. There is no future purgatory required to purge away remaining sins so we can finally be fit for heaven. The qualification is a completed historical reality.
For a sinner, who by nature is a child of wrath, to be instantly and permanently qualified sounds impossible.
How does the mechanics of that actually work?
It happens through the glorious reality of double imputation. Think of it as a legal forensic courtroom declaration combined with a transfer of financial ledgers.
Okay, lay that out for us.
Our sins, our guilt, and our total lack of qualification were imputed or legally credited to Jesus Christ on the cross. He absorbed the full wrath of God in our place, paying the debt we owed.
Simultaneously, Christ's perfect, lifelong, active obedience and spotless righteousness were imputed to us. Through faith alone, we are clothed in the righteousness of the Son.
Therefore, the believer is instantly, forensically, and permanently qualified for the inheritance. God the Father looks at the believer and sees the perfect qualification of Jesus Christ.
And this inheritance is described as belonging to the saints in light. There is a massive redemptive historical shift happening here that we cannot miss, especially given the false teachers in Colossae pushing Jewish legalism.
In the Old Testament, the concept of inheritance was tied to a physical, earthly, geopolitical territory for national Israel. It was tied to the land of Canaan, physical descendants of Abraham, and a specific earthly temple.
But here, Paul is writing to a church composed largely of Gentiles in Asia Minor.
Yes. He explains that the inheritance is no longer an earthly piece of real estate, but a spiritual, heavenly citizenship for the church.
The Father has brought Gentile believers directly into the promise, making them co-heirs with Christ, without them needing to submit to Jewish ceremonial laws, dietary restrictions, or physical circumcision.
The inheritance is entirely spiritual and eternal, located in the kingdom of light. For the Colossians, who were constantly being harassed by false teachers telling them they were second-class citizens unless they followed the Jewish calendar and worship angels, this would have been an incredible comfort.
Oh, absolutely. But this brings up a crucial question regarding human motivation. If my qualification is a completed fact in the past, and my standing is permanently secure through double imputation, why shouldn't I just relax?
That is the common objection.
If I am already qualified, what drives the continuous effort of the worthy walk? Why strive for good works or endure suffering with joy if my ticket is already punched?
That question exposes the difference between a mercenary and a true son. A mercenary only works to earn a wage, or out of fear of being fired or punished.
But forensic justification produces overwhelming, heart-shattering gratitude.
Yes. We do not obey out of fear of losing our status, nor do we obey to earn a higher rank. We obey because we are utterly stunned by the sheer magnitude of sovereign grace.
When you realize that you were a dead, condemned rebel, and the Father unilaterally qualified you at the cost of his own son's blood, the only logical response is a lifetime of joyful submission.
Our daily conduct, our good works, our endurance under trial, all of it is an outpouring of worship for a secured inheritance. Gratitude is the engine of Christian obedience.
Let's synthesize the golden chain laid out by Paul here, because it's a flawless progression.
It really is.
It starts with a monergistic work, God filling the believer with precise, objective intellect, the authoritative knowledge of his will.
This divine intellect fuels a worthy walk, bringing the balanced scales of confession and conduct into alignment.
That walk produces continuous fruit, which is sustained by divine stamina, the iron pillar of joyful endurance under crushing circumstances.
And this entire cycle culminates in unceasing, joyful gratitude to the Father for a completed forensic qualification. It is an unbreakable, logical chain that leaves absolutely no room for human boasting, mystical subjectivism, or pragmatic manipulation.
It relies entirely on the sufficiency of Christ and the objective truth of his word. As we wrap up this deep dive into Colossians, I want to leave you with a searching thought drawn directly from this text.
What is it?
Take a hard look at your own private prayers this week. If someone wrote them down on paper and analyzed them objectively, what would they reveal about your theology?
Would they reveal a desperate hunger for the knowledge of God's will, a desire for ethical obedience, and a plea for the stamina to endure difficult people with joy?
Or would they reveal a heart concerned only with circumstantial comfort, physical health, and earthly success?
The content of our prayers exposes the true anchor of our theology. Let Paul's prison-born intercession recalibrate the desires of your heart, pulling you away from a human-centered religion and grounding you in the objective sufficiency of Christ.
Thank you for joining us on Reformed Thinking. We encourage you to look back into the objective truth of Scripture, recognizing that the Father has already qualified you and that reality changes absolutely everything about how you walk today.